Fiddle me this, Johnny. What do we got here tonight, Shepard?
Thousands of American troops are heading to Russia's backyard as Vladimir Putin masses soldiers, tanks, and artillery on Ukraine's border with no sign of backing down. President Biden deploying about 3,000 U.S. troops to Poland and Romania, two NATO allies. Poland shares a border with Russia, and Romania is Ukraine's neighbor. The White House says this is a defensive move to reassure our NATO partners that the U.S. has their back, no matter what Putin decides to do.
Again, I have to determine, not that I wouldn't necessarily say Ukraine doesn't have special forces. That seems like a big piece of area right there.
It will only fuel military tensions.
When you homogenize those to the wanting to be in NATO level of command of what's going on in the area, now, when you look at the calculus of whose troops are on the ground from the risk table, if you could just look in, you would tell you exactly who's responsible for the debt or the monetary function of functioning that debt.
Deployment is so concerning to the
You
Americans
would say
and
the
the rest
person
of the
most
West
responsible or the people most responsible have the most to lose their debt, so they have the
That's
most
Ukraine's
troops to
capital
lose
city.
that fight for their cause,
Their
their
new satellite
country's
images out to
representation.
show the
It
massive
couldn't hold that by
Russian
force.
military
It could hold
buildup.
that by force.
They are ballistic missile vehicles in Belarus. We have pictures of them from Sunday. In the south, in Crimea, the chunk of Ukraine that Putin
I mean,
invaded
honestly,
and
you
essentially
line them up,
stole
set
back
them
in
up. Well,
2014.
one didn't show up.
We
Well,
can
then you
see
better
from the
beat me on
satellite
odds. So
pictures a
off
sea
the
of
Hamiltonian.
tanks, artillery, and armored vehicles
No,
that are used
you
to
don't do
carry
that.
infantry into battle.
Hard to
that
do business
suggests
with
that
Americans,
there
wouldn't it
is
be?
acceleration.
Who gets to
And we
piss
reported
on
just
every
days
rule
ago
that they want
that
to
the
make any
Russians have
board that
also
they want?
moved
Now, I mean, you
blood
can
to
already
what
do
amounts
whatever
to
state you
the
want.
front
It's
line.
freedom. You split
Nothing's
shares to
gone over
buy
the border as
$100
far as
worth
we
of
know,
Tesla
but
nowadays if
everything
you
they
know what
might
you're digging
need to
for.
carry out a war is now there.
Talk about all the time.
And to Ukraine's east, on the Russian soil, there are battle groups assembled at a military training ground. Now, the United
And at the end of that, none of them at
States
the
have made it
basic
perfectly
level are going to
clear
come out to the
they're
labor function,
pushing
will they?
for a
I mean,
diplomatic
for the
resolution.
retention.
The British Prime Minister
I
Boris
mean, the
Johnson had a
job
phone
forces
call
that they
today
can make
with
jobs
President
for
Putin
because
of
all
Russia.
that real
And
estate's
during
out
that
there
call,
for
he
the
warned
position and what the
that
board
any
meeting
invasion of
says the
Ukraine
CEO
could
could
be
do
a
from the
tragic
differential of
miscalculation.
somebody
That's a
that might
quote.
be just working
The
down in
Kremlin
their office.
mocked Johnson after
Somebody
the call
else's
and
that
said
might
he
be a
was
good position for the
utterly
set.
confused. Now,
Well,
President
generally
Biden
say
has
by
said he has
indexes.
no
It's your
intention of
monster. It's all the
sending
graphics
any
on there
American
that aren't
forces into Ukraine
homogenized
itself.
in a
The
system that
question
doesn't
is,
have the
what
proper
will
phase
happen next
orders.
from the Russians?
How
Let's turn
that
to the retired
Alpha
four-star naval officer Admiral James
Alpha
DeVries.
Beta
Now, for some
today
context,
about
he's the former
not
Supreme
too long
Allied
ago. The other
Commander in
day there
NATO
was one.
and a
Bill
senior
Green, I
NBC
think, is the
News
other one. There's
international
another one.
security and diplomacy
They're on
contributor.
YouTube. Put out an
Admiral,
awful
it's good to see you as
article.
always. So
They
now we're
generally do
sending
the
3,000
collision
troops,
so many
US
times it's
troops,
watered
to
down.
Poland and
Generally,
Romania.
they're
None going into Ukraine, the
because you're
president
so close,
insists.
too far
But
away,
this
or don't
movement, is
understand
it
that
the right move, both
collision frame
militarily and
rate works the
diplomatically?
same way to
I think it is, Chef.
all the housing
and
works.
let's start with the military capability here. These are not just sort of 3,000 random U.S.
The
troops.
figure
These
four,
are
as
from
far
the
as an
legendary
optic
18th
experiment in
Airborne
calculus for group
Corps,
theory, has been
our
around for a
most,
long time.
heavily blooded unit in modern American
It's a stick,
history.
just a regular
Came
stick
of
out there, and that
Afghanistan
one you
and
can't
Iraq.
use the same
These
stick
are
as somebody
very
else. In
highly
the
trained combat
competitive
troops. They'll
equilibrium,
connect with
what's
our
left
allies'
over for the
forces, with our
monopole is the
own
ability to
US
pull
Army
out a knife,
forces
not
already
cut off their
stationed in
finger, and
Europe.
actually make the
And
figure
it's
four
a
work
means
with
to
everybody
show
using the same
the
rock.
Russians that we are very serious
Time.
about defending NATO's borders, so it's about reassuring our NATO allies. I think it's an effective military
Bust out my
and
firebow,
diplomatic
brother.
move.
Dakota
but
hole
not
this thing.
provocative, such that it might push Putin to do something he might not otherwise not do.
Yeah, I think it's highly calibrated.
When you think
in that
about the
sense,
OP briefs,
Jeff.
that
And
all OP
let's
briefs,
face
they
it,
all go
you
the
know,
same
life is
way.
compared
Soldiers
to
have
what?
competitive
And
liberty.
compared
When
to
you really think about the
130,000
competitive
Russian
soldier that
troops
wants to
you
take the
laid
front
out
line because they
beautifully
earn the
ago,
mission,
3,000
and the
troops
calculus
is
falls short from
sufficient
NATO
to
that's
signal
not there to
resolve,
support them to
but
be
doesn't
at the
cross
troop front
threshold
line of the
of
internal shit that
stumbling
all
into a
governments
war
don't
with
like.
Russia. I think it's the right move.
Admiral Sterides, what additional
You're a
military
blockchain.
pressures,
You got
if
bit
any, should
farming
the
running
president
all
be
the time. You
considering?
want to do something with the money
Well,
that
you
you're
know, the
doing that's
Admiral's gonna
outside
say
that
this,
to catch a
but the
different
Black
index
Sea
and
to
just
the
on the
south
money.
is a
Maybe you hit
place where
that.
we could
Look
send
at what comic
some
was.
of our
Yeah, you had to murder
destroyers. They
somebody's
could
friend to
provide
actually get fulfillment in life.
intelligence,
One of Rick and
cyber
Morty
support,
offshoots there.
general show of support to our NATO allies that border that Black Sea. Number two, Shep,
Yeah,
I'd
I'm
say
not a rich
cyber.
man.
We
I think
know
I
the
got there.
Russians are going to cross that border not just with tanks but with electrons.
I'm gonna
bits,
say
ones
you
and
coming
zeros.
up
They're gonna
late.
try and
Calling you out,
dismantle
Sharps.
the Ukrainian
Calling you
command
out.
and control. Providing cyber security, I think, is going to be very important as well. And then third and finally, getting in the hands of the Ukrainian military, and I know them well. They will fight. They're very proud. Get them the
You
Javelin
thought it was about sexual
missiles for
harassment. That was the first
anti-armor,
thing you did
the
wrong. And
Stinger
really, you
missiles
thought there
for
was a difference
anti-air.
of a drill
Give them
sergeant
the
not having
drills,
the
the
job as a
Ukrainians will
sexual
fight
harassment
and fight
officer at
hard.
all points
We
in time.
talk about Putin invading, but there are a lot of different looks that an invasion can
Interesting.
take on.
Why?
That
Good
said,
gravity.
what would an invasion
Now,
of any
we might
kind
have some
look like from a
arguments
NATO
about what the end
perspective?
result is, but as long as the
From a
framework
NATO
works
perspective,
out,
we're
Shepard,
going to
I
see
really don't
first
care
and
where you put
foremost
them in
that
terms of the
cyber
farm.
attack.
Please make sure the
Secondly,
calculus
watch
is staying
for
up to par with those
Russian
wardens getting
naval
all.
assets to complete that encirclement.
Or I'll bring
in
in
the Black
3B.
Sea.
We can do
Then
that.
you're gonna
Special
see
gravity.
the
He'd love
tanks,
it. We
the
pay
shock
him. He's
troops
good.
going
They learn.
forward.
He does the
This
thing
is
he
the
does.
8th Guards Army, a legendary Russian unit from World War II. They will cross that border. The question, Shep, is
A lot of that
how
separation.
far are they going to go? My
I don't mean
bet
this with
they stay
disrespect.
in
There was one guy. When I
southeast
got into the
Ukraine,
pod,
where
there
there's
was
a lot
only
of
like one black guy
pro-Russian
in there.
sentiment, many
After a
ethnic
little while, a
Russians
bunch
live in
more
that
come in.
area.
And
The
mannerisms
further
changed,
to
but
the
he had
west
the
they
turnover
push,
of that whole
the more
group moving that
concerned
way,
NATO's
and I've
gonna
moved
become.
that way,
Concern
and
is
other
one
groups
thing, but
before. How you have to
if they
start
start
talking, or
knocking
you just
out
get caught up
power
in the
grids and
momentum
making
of the
things
group of the.
difficult, either for the Ukrainians or potentially for others within NATO, a strike on one is a
Whatever,
strike on
who's
all.
stabbing it?
Is there a risk of escalation just in the cyber realm that could see an American city or a pipeline or an electric grid shut down?
Unfortunately, that
Well,
is
it goes back to those little
absolutely
drones they were
correct.
dropping
And
around
you
earlier
are
today.
right that
In the
in
end
the
of it, take
NATO
those off the
charter, an
table because it's just
attack
like
on a
chemical
NATO
warfare and the
member,
reality
which
of what it
Ukraine
is.
not,
I mean, if I
but
start
an
taking
attack
that
on a
all away
NATO
and I just
member,
put a
for
you and a
example,
unit and
your
I
point,
asked you to
a
move things
cyber
around or
attack
gave you a
would
fucking
require the
jigsaw
alliance
puzzle and I
to
found out
respond
you're all a bunch of
collectively.
fucking
And at
retards.
the moment, the Biden administration is gathering
And at the end of that
private
tool means nothing to
sector
the top end of technology,
finance
what you loan once you
the
blow up that area.
transportation grid, the
And I know you don't
electric
give a
side of the
fuck
house,
about a soldier
all
like
of
that's some
those
general's job. At the
critical
end of it, you're gonna
infrastructure,
get your dick
private
crippled in
sector
there
elements
because you be the
are
one cleaning it
working
up and
with
rebuilding it.
U.S. Cyber Command,
You've been thinking the
the
long
National
game
Security
for the shorts
Agency,
on your
and other
contract. Now
cyber
that's
actors
fine
in
and
the
dandy for
United
the most
States
part
for
because I
exactly
get it.
that reason. We're concerned
A Stonehenge
this is broad.
or
Russia could attack
freaking
us
Hadron
using
Collider
cyber.
or anything else we call the
Admiral
marshmallow
Stavridis,
today.
thanks so much.